Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon or evening. Thank you so much for joining today's live demonstration of the Tethys platform. Today, we have Nathan Swain, who will guide you all through the installation process and show you how to build a simple web mapping application. So we're excited to have him walk us through this session. So with that, I will hand it over to Nathan.
Thank you, Elodie. And thank you everyone for coming. Today we're going to, as Elodie said, go through a more practical example of how to use Tethys Platform. And that includes doing the installation, creating a new application, and I guess adding maps and data to that application. What you'll want to do when you start using Tethys Platform is go to our website, tethysplatform.org. And from here, you can get access to all of the resources that you need to get started. In the Getting Started menu, you'll find a link to our documentation. So that's where I would start. That will bring you to this page on our documentation. And we have this section called the Quick Start that has, we like to say, 3 easy steps to get started. Technically, I guess there's 4. You will need to have Conda installed using either Mini Conda or Anaconda. We're kind of assuming that a lot of people are coming from having a little bit of maybe scientific Python programming experience and are familiar with Conda. My recommendation for people who have never used Conda is to go with Mini Conda. So I'll just show you their installation page. We have the link there from our documentation. Mini Conda can be installed on Windows, Mac, or Linux. Just choose your flavor of installation instructions and follow them here. There's a few different types of installers. For Windows and Mac, they have a graphical installer, but then for Linux and Mac, they also have the command line installer or the terminal installer. I've already gone through this process and installed Mini Conda. So once you have Mini Conda installed, then it's a matter of running 3 simple commands. Now, when you're working in Tethys Platform, you'll be using a few different files in what we call a scaffold, which I will show you shortly. So I like to use a code editor, and my favorite currently is Visual Studio Code. And again, you can find that online. It's freely available and open source, I believe. And it can be installed on any platform. So that's my recommendation. But there are many different code editors. If you already have one that you prefer, feel free to use that. I will say today is not meant to be follow along, so I'm just going to demonstrate how to use it, and then I'd be happy to help you in the future if you have any issues. So what I've done is I'm actually going to be running this in Linux. I'm on Windows, but I'm using WSL, which has Linux kind of embedded in Windows. My preference is to use Linux or Mac for development, but you can do it in Windows just fine. So I've opened Visual Studio Code and connected it to my WSL Linux. And one of the nice things about VS Code is that you have a terminal embedded in the editor, so you can run commands right where you're editing code. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to install Tethys. Just hide these controls. Let's see. So let me grab that command again. I'm pulling this from that quick start documentation. Now I'm going to do a couple of things to customize this. The default name of the environment is Tethys, but you can call it whatever you'd like. I'm going to create one called Tethys YM for youth mappers. And the other thing that I want to do is specify the version of Django. Tethys Platform, as we talked about in the last webinar, is built on Django, an open source web development framework in Python. And right now the stable release is version 4.2. So I want to make sure that I'm using that one. Now, this will take about 2 minutes to run. So while that's running, I'm going to show you some additional resources that you can use as you're developing with Tethys. So in the documentation, you'll see on the side here, we have different links. The quick start, of course, is how you get started with and up and running in Tethys quickly, as you'll see. But if you want more detailed instructions, this getting started link kind of provides a more detailed setup. What I recommend most people start is with the tutorials, and you can access that here with this link. And we have quite a few different tutorials. The key concepts tutorial is where you want to start, and then other tutorials I would recommend you kind of visit based on your interest. If you are interested in working with GeoServer, maybe you want to check out that tutorial. Or if you work with Google Earth Engine, you could check out that, etc. But the key concepts is the one that you want to start with. We're also going to be talking about the map layout today, so that may be a good one. In addition to our tutorials, we have development guides. And there are a few different guides that or I guess groupings of guides that we have here. So we have the command line interface that will kind of detail the different commands that you can run with Tethys. The software development kit will describe the different APIs that are available in Tethys Platform for you to use. These include a lot of different things, from templating to app settings, how to work with files with the Paths API, routing, etc. We'll be talking about the template gizmos API, for example, today, so that's another good one. These are more reference, so and honestly, the best way to find something that you need in here is just using the search functionality. In addition to that, we've got guides for the Tethys portal and the software suite, which I'll talk about after we get our development server started. The last resource I want to point out is if you go back to our website, tethysplatform.org, here you can get access to our community, which there are a few different solutions. So if you need help or if you think you found a bug, the best place to get help is on our discussions page. And to report bugs or suspected bugs, you can report an issue. Both of these are links to our GitHub page. So if I click on discussions, you'll see it's kind of like a forum where you can post a question, and I review these and many of our other kind of core contributors also review these. And this is the best place, I guess, our preferred way to help people, because the answers can help anyone who has the same question in the future. And then our issues page can also be, you can get there from our website, or it's just here in GitHub on the issues tab. This is another good place to search if you're having a problem with using Tethys, or if you need to report a suspected bug. Okay, so that environment should be solved. We just need to enter yes to proceed, and it will download all of the libraries and dependencies of Tethys and install them. So what we're doing here is we're creating a Conda environment that has Tethys Platform installed. The idea with a Conda environment is that you can have multiple environments with different sets of dependencies installed for different projects, so that you don't end up with conflicts. Perhaps you have a script that you're working on that requires NumPy, for example, and another script that requires a different version. You can use two different environments with the versions of NumPy in them that you need to avoid conflicts. This should wrap up here shortly. All right. Okay, the second step in our quick start is to do just as it suggests here, and that's to activate the environment. If you notice right now on the left here, it says base. When I activate the environment, it will switch to the new environment that I've installed. Now, once that environment is active, it gives me access to the Tethys command. And the Tethys command is what you will use to do a lot of different operations when you're working in Tethys. You can see we've got version 4.3.6 installed today. And then the last step of the quick start is to run the Tethys quick start command. And this does quite a few different things for us. So we'll let it run through. And we'll review this in a moment. All right. And one of the things that it does for us is it starts up what we call the development server. And in VS Code, I can just control click on that and it will open up in a web browser. So this is what we call the Tethys portal. It's a kind of full portal website, but in this case, it's running locally. The address 127.0.0.1 is reserved for the home address of your computer, of any computer. Another name for this is localhost. And it's running on local port 8000. The default username is admin, and the password is pass, P-A-S-S. It doesn't need to be extremely secure because this is just a development environment. Only you have access to it on your computer. And one of the things that the Quick Start did is it created an app for us, what we call a scaffold. You can see it's called Hello World, and we're able to view that right away with the Quick Start. So let me show you a little more and review the output of what the Quick Start did. So if we go to the top of where it started, the first thing it does is it creates your configuration file for your portal. It's useful to note this location so that you can access this file in the future to change settings. It also set up a Lite database, an SQLite database, and created a bunch of tables, is what all these outputs with the OK mean. It set up our user admin that we just logged in with, and then it scaffolded a new application. In this case, it's called Hello World. And it just creates this in the folder that you're working in. And what a scaffold is it basically creates all of the files that you need for a Tethys application. The final thing it does is it installs that application into your Tethys portal and then starts up the development server. So I want to dive into a little more about what this scaffold is. So I'm going to click on Open Folder here and navigate to where I created that. I created a folder called Youth Mappers for this demonstration. So I'll just select the folder. This is a naming convention of our app scaffolds. They all start with Tethys app dash and then the name of the application. So I'll just select that folder and we'll get a better idea of what this is. Now this restarts Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to have to activate my environment again. On to activate Tethys YM. It's an important step. You'll need to do that to be able to access the Tethys command. And then I'm going to start my development server. This time, instead of using Quick Start, I'm just going to use Tethys Start. Quick Start is kind of a one-off command that you run the first time to get everything set up. After that, you can just start it. Okay, if we look at the Explorer here on the left, you'll see that there are several different files in our scaffold. We won't look at all of them, but a few of the key files, the app.py kind of is where you do most of the configuration for your application. You can see here it's got a name, which shows up here in your title. It has an icon, which is the logo for your app, and a few other things, including color. So maybe we could experiment with this a little bit. It expects the color to be in hexadecimal format. An easy way to find that is just to search for a color picker and find a color that you like. So maybe I want to change it to an orange color, for example. It's kind of burnt orange. There we go. So I can copy this hex number and then go back to the color here. And I'll save it. Control S. As soon as I do, the development server detects that change and automatically restarts. To see the change here, though, I need to also refresh the page. And now you can see the theme color of the application changed. Now, everything else you're seeing in the application is provided by a template. And the template basically includes a header that has things like your controls for settings, your user profile. There's a navigation menu that can be open and closed with this button that you could put links to different pages in your app in. And then this bottom area is what we call the app actions area. These buttons don't do anything, they're just for demonstration. But that's kind of the idea, is you put different actions of your app down here. And then you have your content area, which right now is just showing some pretty boring content, just some different type settings. A few other things about the app is you have settings, and there's an app settings API that you can use to create custom settings for your app that you could configure. For example, maybe you want to create an application that focuses on one region in the world, and you have a setting to set what region that is. You could create that with the app settings API and then access those settings here. Okay, so what we really try to do with Tethys is provide out of the box the basic web layout that you need. You don't have to worry about all of the nitty-gritty details of setting up just your base template, so that you can get started just adding your content to the web application. Let's go ahead and continue looking at some other files. Tethys Platform uses a model view controller paradigm. Controller is where your code is. In this case, it's Python code that handles the logic for your view. And then templates are where your views are. So the controller and the template work together. So for our home page, we have this home.html. And you can see here's some of that content. The template is split into different blocks to allow you to insert content in those different areas of the page that I just showed you. So for example, the app content area, you insert your HTML here, and it will show up in this main area here. Similarly, we have blocks for other parts of the section, like the app actions. Now you'll notice here another feature of Tethys. Here, where we've got the buttons, we're using something called Gizmo. The Gizmo API provides kind of little pieces of a website that you can insert. A lot of these are controls like buttons and inputs and select drop downs, date pickers, things like that. But some of them are more complex, like plots and maps that you can customize with your content, your data. To create the options for these gizmos, these are actually controlled in your controllers file. So if we go back to the controller for the home page, you can see we're using the Tethys SDK gizmos and importing button. And if we look at where that is used, we have our different buttons that we've defined. So as an example, if we look at the save button, we've given it a name and an icon, and the style, success means green. And then we also have different attributes like the title and the tooltip. So if we look at that, this is this save button down here. Success means green. In this case, it's following the bootstrap color styles. So we can change that if we'd like by, say we want it to say something else like open. And instead of success, we want it to be info, which will turn it kind of a blue. And then for the icons, we can actually choose, we use the Bootstrap icons library. So really you can find any icon that's here, like maybe this airplane, and just use that name. So in this case it's called, or if we go back to here, just called airplane. So maybe I change that to airplane, oops, and spell it correctly. Now I save that, and our development server should restart. And now I can refresh the page, and that button is now updated. Okay. So that's just a quick intro to gizmos. Now the way that this is connected to the template, the controller is connected to the template, is if you go down to the bottom, you'll see we return app.render. And we give it the name of the template we're working with and a context. And the context is just a dictionary that has your different variables that you want available on your template. In this case, the gizmos that we're using. So here's our save button. If we look in our template, we're referencing that same variable here. So that's kind of how the controllers and the views are connected. Let's go ahead and, since this is youth mappers, let's add a map. We're going to use another gizmo called the map gizmo for this. And first, what we'll need to do is import some new objects from the Tethys Gizmos library. This includes the map view, an object called MV view that controls basically where the map is focusing, and then MV layer to add layers. Pop down to the bottom again. And first thing I'll do is I'll define the view for this map. In this case, I'm setting a projection that I'm going to use to define kind of the center point for this view and the initial zoom level. And I'm also setting a min and a max zoom for how far the user can zoom in, zoom out. And then I'll go ahead and add map view. I don't have my layer yet, so we'll hold off on that. Okay. And the last thing I need to do is pass that into my context and then add it to my template. And instead of putting it in this actions area, I want it in the main content area. So I'll use what's called a tag, the gizmo tag, and I just give it that object that I passed through the context. Okay. And then if I refresh the page, now I have a map. There's no content on it yet, but this is actually powered by the open source project called Open Layers. I've got zoom controls, kind of an extent button that will zoom me to the default extent that I set, which in this case is CONUS US. And I've got several different base maps to find. CartoDB or even Esri base maps. So that's the result. If we look at the code, we can start to pick apart how this worked. So the height and width, or the height and width of the map, I just set it to be 100% of the width of the area and then 800 pixels tall. The controls define which controls are showing up on the map, including that zoom to extent button, the zoom slider, and I don't know if you noticed, but there was also a mouse position down here in the corner showing the coordinates of your mouse. Sometimes helpful. The base map options are defined here in a list. And then we have no layers yet, so we'll add a layer here shortly. But before we do that, let me show you where you can find all this in the documentation. You may be wondering, how would I know to do this? So again, in our documentation page, you could just search for map view. And in this case, it's the map view gizmo. So you could probably, this one here will bring you to the documentation on this object, this class. And you see there's a description of each of the different inputs. And if you keep scrolling down, there's more explanations of some of those more complex ones, like the base maps, with lists of different options that you have available there for the base maps, the controls, and eventually you'll come to the examples. And this probably is the best place to start. You can just copy and paste the different pieces that you need and then modify them to what you're trying to do. So in this case, I would like to add a layer. And after the last webinar, there was a lot of interest in GeoGlows. So I'm going to actually be adding a GeoGlows layer. So let me pull up their documentation. Let's see. Got the link copied here. Well, let me search for it. So if I just search for GeoGlows, they have a great website. And what I'm interested in is the data. And to access information about that, I go to GeoGlows service. And there's a few different options for accessing it. In our case, we're going to use their map service that they provide. They collaborate with Esri, so they have a map service on the Living Atlas that's perfect for what we need. If you need access to bulk data, you can actually access it on Amazon Web Services. And there's also an API that we'll use a little later today. So I'm going to go look at the map. This article actually has a lot of details about the map service and how it was developed and different features of it. I'm going to scroll to the bottom where there's a link to the Living Atlas layer. Okay, and if you're familiar with ArcGIS, they have this. This should look pretty familiar to you. This is kind of a summary page for a layer, and really what I want is this URL here. So I'll copy that for use later. The other thing I want to do is define a layer, and if we go back to our map view documentation, we use the MV layer object to do that. And there are a few different types of layers that we support out of the box. So one is GeoJSON, another is an image web map service, which is the OGC standard for mapping. KML layers, if you've used those. And the one we're looking for is Tile ArcGIS REST. So I'll just copy that piece of code. And we'll define this before our map because our map's going to use it. And then what I need to do is replace this URL here with the one that we copied earlier from the GeoGlows service. And it's not a highway, so let's call this GeoGlows. Wow. Spelling is hard. Okay. GeoGlows Streamflow. So that will define our layer. What we need to do is add it to our map. So I'll copy the name of that variable and just add it to this list of layers. And save that. And wait for my development server to restart. That's been running here the whole time in the background. And we'll bring this back over. And again, you have to refresh to see the changes. And there you go. So you can see the streams are showing up. You can see different areas have a little bit of color, like this yellow down here. But it's not interactive yet. It's just showing the map service. And so what would be really nice is if we could click on the map and find a stream and see its data, right? Kind of similar to the Hydra viewer I showed you last time. And to do that, I'm actually going to create a new app and switch to the map layout because the map layout has a lot more features to it, including something I call click and plot that allows you to do just what I described, click on the map and plot data. We could do that with gizmos, but it would be more, we would have to add the plot ourselves with a plot gizmo, and we'd have to code a lot of the interactions. The map layout provides a lot of that out of the box. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is open the terminal again. And notice here it says to quit the server, press Control C. So I'll do Control C, and that will stop the development server and give me access to the enter commands again. Let me just clear this. And I'm going to create a new app using the Tethys scaffold command. The quick start does this for you and creates the first app, but you can run the Tethys scaffold command to create as many apps as you'd like. So I'll go ahead and create that. And it just prompts you for a few things here. So maybe I want it, instead of being called GeoGlows with the lowercase, I want the uppercase in my title. And you could write a description of the app. This is for the youth mappers demo. And you could define your theme color. I'll just accept the default there. You can add tags, put your author name. I encourage you to enter all of this metadata. Well, I won't do that since it's being recorded. License name, if you want to give it an open source license like BSD, 3 clause maybe, etc. And it will go ahead and generate all those files again. And you can see these are created in this youth mappers directory, and it's called Tethys app GeoGlows viewer. So I'll go ahead and open that folder. So we can start modifying this app. And then again, the terminal is restarted, so I need to activate my environment. After a while, this becomes pretty automatic. And then start up the development server. Now the app, you'll notice our app wasn't loaded, and that's because currently when we ran the quick start, it set up the portal to be in single app mode. Oh, and I also didn't install the app, so I skipped a couple of steps. Okay, so I need to actually install this app. Sorry. So now that I've opened the folder, I need to change into the directory that has this install.yaml, which is just the root directory, and run the Tethys install. I'm going to use the -d option, so it's in development mode. That will just make it so that when I make changes, it updates automatically. Okay, and it's not happy with me for some reason, which is my luck. Maybe we'll look at this app. I wonder if changing the name, it wasn't happy with that. Well, I'm not sure, so we'll try and, oh, well, not really sure what's going on. So something else we need to do is we need to open that settings file again. I think I can open it through recent. Here we go. Since I opened it before. And we need to put this in multi-app mode. We'll just comment that out. So these are settings that the quick start set up for us. In order to show multiple apps, we need to change it to multiple app mode. Let's try this again. Why aren't you happy? Does not exist. Well, that's fun. Maybe what I'll do, I wonder if it's because I was manipulating this in the past. So I'm gonna, in getting ready for this call. So let me remove that and try running the scaffold command again. This time I'll just accept the defaults. I wonder if maybe something got messed up when I did that. that worked for some reason. I'm not sure why. Okay, so yeah, you run the Tethys install command, and then we can start our development server. Now, when we're in multi-app mode, you'll see it loaded both those apps that we had, the Hello World app and now the GeoGlows viewer. The Tethys portal operates a little differently. So instead of just opening to my app when I log in, I have this home page for the Tethys portal, and then I also have what we call the apps library, where you'll see tiles for your different apps. So I'll go into the GeoGlows viewer. It really likes purple today. That's fun. That's okay. I like purple. So that's our new app. And as I said, we want to work with the map layout. Again, the best way to get started is to search for the map layout. And then, let's see. One of these is the tutorial. I actually want to go to the development guide. This gives a good overview of the map layout. It has code examples, and it has lots of descriptions of the different features. So I'm going to just start by copying not everything here. I'm just going to copy basically the bare minimum, except I don't want that lazy. Well, we'll clean it up. And I'm going to open up now in this GeoGlows app, the controllers.py, and we're going to replace this whole home controller. So I'll just select everything, paste, but I'm going to get rid of a few things. I'm not going to worry about a back URL. And instead of map, I'm going to call this home so that it picks it up as my home controller. And then we need to import from the app.py the app class. And put that here. Maybe we'll call this GeoGlows viewer. Let's subtitle it demo or something like that. And I guess this needs to be changed to our app name. Okay, and we'll save that and let the development server restart. Now, this app class is something you reference a lot in your code. It's just this object that we're importing here. The map layout uses it to kind of customize it for your app. So now if I go here and refresh it, you'll see that the view is completely different. It overrides everything basically. And here we get similar controls, but they're a little more, they're themed to your app, including a home button. Here's your base maps. These are the defaults since we didn't define any. And you got full screen mode. And eventually when we add layers, you'll have a layer tree out here on the left. So yeah, the map layout is a lot more fully featured, and it's meant to get you started with a lot less code. Now let's define a few other things here. Maybe I want all of the base maps like we had in our map gizmo, so I could add this option to define that. I can define a different default bounding box and our zoom options. Just wait for that to restart. So now the map is showing the extent of the continent Africa. And if I zoom out or pan away and hit home, it zooms back there. So that's all looking good. Now we'd like to add our GeoGlows layer. And again, probably the best way to do this is to go find an example of what we want in the code. And so if I look here, I can see add layers here. It has a description of how you add layers. You do it by adding this method called compose layers. Which, yeah, this is showing a GeoServer example. So if I look on the side menu here, there's a ArcGIS REST example. So we could copy that and use that to start with. For the sake of time, I've already got one that's kind of customized for us, ready to go. And so what I've done here is I've defined this method, compose layers. Instead of an MV layer object, I use this method build ArcGIS layer to define the layer. Behind the scenes, it's creating that MV layer object. I can give it a title that will show up in that layer picker, set it default to visible true, and set the extents for it. The map view is passed into this method, so I can just add that layer to the map view. And then to get it to show up in the tree, the layer picker on the left, I need to define a set of layer groups. In this case, I'm creating one called GeoGlows. And let's just refresh that to see what that looks like. If I can grab this. Sorry, the video controls are in the way. Okay. So let me refresh that. And now we're basically at where we were before. The difference is now we have this layer picker, so I can zoom to the extent of that layer or go back to home of my map, and I can control opacity of it here. Now for the interactivity, we're going to have to do some JavaScript. Pull up this documentation again. Sorry for all the switching. So again, if you look on kind of this page menu here, we have near the bottom the JavaScript API documentation. Now, JavaScript is the language, the code that's run in your web browser as opposed to on the server. And so there are a lot of different, I guess, API endpoints for the map that we can enable or that we can use in JavaScript. So what we want to do is be able to click on the map and then kind of customize, show some data based on that. So I first need to enable a few options by setting them here on the map layout. Show map click pop-up is going to enable a pop-up when you click. Show map clicks will show a point when you click. And then the plot slide sheet shows a plot that we can turn on. And I'm going to use a new file. So in public, I can go to this main JavaScript file that's created for you as part of the scaffold. And what I'm going to do is use the map view map clicked function. And what you do is you give it a JavaScript function that gets called whenever you click on the map, and it passes to you the coordinates. We're going to convert those to latitude, longitude, because by default they're in Web Mercator. And then we're going to change the content of our pop-up to show those coordinates and then show a plot. So I'll refresh the page again, and now I can click The plot is empty because we don't have any data, but it showed the plot, and we're showing our different latitude and longitude wherever we click along with that point. Now to populate the plot, we can use another feature of the map layout. But first, we kind of have to do this in two steps. We need to get our river ID. And to do that, we can use the GeoGlows API. Which actually not entirely sure how to get to it from here, but I have the link. So this kind of documents their API. They have two endpoints we'll use here. One is river ID. You just provide a latitude and a longitude, and it returns the closest river ID. And Hydro Viewer returns the data for that river. In this case, the streamflow forecast. So you need a river ID to do that. So the way that we can call that API is using the built-in fetch API that comes with JavaScript. So we give it the URL to that endpoint, and we're going to insert our latitude and longitude. And this is kind of standard using fetch. You parse the data that comes back, and then we have a function that will basically parse out the river ID and update our pop-up content like we were doing before, but now instead of latitude, longitude, we're showing the river ID. So let me refresh that. And for this, we'll actually want to click near a river. So it takes a second for fetch to run and get that data. You can see it is getting different river IDs now. Takes just a second for it to grab that. Okay, and the last thing, we'll use the other endpoint now to I'm trying to see where I'm going to copy, to retrieve the streamflow data and add it to the plot. So I'm just going to take this whole thing again. So we run a second fetch here on the Hydro Viewer endpoint, give it the river ID, and it returns the data, which we kind of parse into this series format for Plotly, which is what is being used for the plotting. We're going to put our date time series for the X and our flow, median flow for the Y. It's median because the GeoGlow service is an ensemble forecast. And so, yeah, this is the average. And actually, I'm going to console log that data so we can look at it. Basically print it. And then we kind of set some layout things on our plots, like the titles of the different axes and the units. And then I'm using map update plot. I can name the plot. I provide the data and the layout object, and then call show plot. So now I'm really interested in this area that has activity going on because it will show interesting values. Grabs the river ID, does the next call, and then the plot will pop up. And there it is. So now we're using an external service in our application to be able to show the data. Let's try that one. There is a little bit of a delay when it updates. There's some strategies that you can do. What we'd probably want to do is put some sort of loading animation in there, like a GIF. but it's functional for now. So that's a real whirlwind introduction to developing in Tethys. The map layout made it so that we could develop all of that in less than 100 lines of code, which is pretty significant simplification. Now, if you're uncomfortable using JavaScript, we have an experimental API that will be coming out soon that is pure Python. It's our ReactPy or component way of developing apps. And the promise of that will be to do everything purely in Python. All of this dynamic behavior of clicking and showing plots can be handled through the Python. As I said, it's experimental, but if you're interested in getting access to that, please feel free to contact me, and I'd be happy to let you know when that's released. Again, if you need any help, please visit our discussions page or our issues page. There's a lot of help on there already, so you can search for your issue. But we're also happy to answer any question that you post there. That is the end of what I have to show you today. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.